again to a new episode of the QCast. I'm sitting here with Connor Garnett. Connor,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. This is fun. So we're here in San Clemente, California for the Orange County Cup. This is one of my favorite venues. You have a lot more experience. Where do you rank San Clemente compared to all the other PPA tournaments you go to?
Yeah, I mean, it's just terrible here, like the weather, the course. No, this is one of the best venues. I really like this one. Cincinnati's a cool one, being a tennis tournament there as well. North Carolina's a great one. There's a lot of good venues, but this is definitely up at the top for sure.
I mean, it's gorgeous here. The weather's always perfect.
Yeah.
Good times here.
A couple minutes away from the water. It's tough to beat.
Well, I've been wanting to get you back on the pod, and you're co-hosting today, so thanks so much for sitting down with me. We've got some fun stuff, so we're going to go through and have a paddle giveaway, and we'll talk about the details in a second, but we're going to basically be forced to pick from the draw. It'll be a random number generator, so we're not choosing favorites here. And then we're going to do paddles of the week. We're going to talk about your paddle, why you're playing with this particular type. It's a Protohype from ProXR. Get into pro tips. So give us some tips on your amazing two-handed backhand. We're going to do a little bit of a gear deep dive. So how you weight up your paddle, why you prefer certain shapes over others. And then this is a continuation from last week, but we're going to talk about how paddle shape affects the sweet spot of the paddle. And then get into Q&A.
Heck yeah, let's do it.
Let's jump into it. All right, so you're here. You're playing men's doubles, singles. I know that much.
Yeah.
So you're playing mixed also?
Mixed doubles with Brooke Buckner, yep.
Oh, nice. Brooke. So you and Brooke played today?
Yes, just got off the court with that one, got the dub, so moving on there.
Fantastic. And you and Travis haven't played yet today?
We start tomorrow for men's doubles. So men's doubles is just like a random thing. Fun fact for viewers, men's singles does not have buys anymore. So all the players will play that. And same with mixed. Gender doubles still has buys, so you wouldn't play until Wednesday in a progressive draw. And then women's singles in some of these bigger tournaments still has buys as well. So there's a little bit of kind of movement there for the draws.
All right. Any matches? You've seen the draw, so do you know who you're playing yet, or have they not played?
So in singles, I believe I play Blaine Hovenier tomorrow. I played a qualifier, Ty Parrish, today. Had a good battle with him. Was able to get through that one. Mixed. The nice thing about the progressive draw is you can kind of look that night, get your game plan, so it's not as forward-looking as all the matches of one event in one day.
And have you and Travis played together?
We played last North Carolina.
Okay.
And lost in a heartbreaker to Pablo and Fed in the quarters. 11, I want to say 9 in the third. I could be wrong. It could have been worse. It felt like 11-9 in my heart, but.
No, I love seeing you together. Do you have some secret strategies you can share?
Yeah, one thing from that I've always known about Travis is he's an intellectual, with how he looks at the game, which is really exciting to share the court with him. We haven't deep dived too much into strategy yet, but I'm sure we're gonna have some patterns out there and have some fun.
There we go. Feel it out as you go.
Exactly.
All right, Connor, let's get into this giveaway. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick a team out of the round of 64 for men's doubles, for women's doubles, and mixed doubles. And we're not gonna pick. We're gonna let the computer pick for us. But what we'll do is the person that the computer picks for us, whichever team makes it deepest into the tournament, wins. So let's say you win, I lose, I have to give away a paddle. Have to.
Got it.
I get to give away a paddle. So I will choose. Actually, I'm going to show you my paddle in a second. If you lose, you give away one of your signature paddles. We'll have you sign it. I'll take it home with me. We'll mail it to the winners. We'll have our listeners and viewers enter a random poll, and whoever is randomly chosen will win the paddle that's given away. So it's either from you or from me. I'm sure everybody's hoping you lose so that they get your paddle. So I actually have, I was thinking, I'm like, what paddle I'm going to give away, because I've got a million of them. Doesn't really make sense for me to give one away that I reviewed, but Holbrook, as a joke, so Eddie and I on our podcast were talking about the Holbrook Arma, and we were like, you know what, we'd love to see it in a black and white colorway. So it has the production models have a black handle, and
and it says the Johnkew edition on there.
Not only did they give us a white and black one, but he put my autograph on it. So it's a one of a kind. Not many people want my autograph, but at least you got like a little collectible item because of the one of a kind. So good stuff. Thanks Holbrook for doing that. All right, well let's do it. Let's do the random number generator. So we're gonna do it for you first. So for men's doubles, there are 18 teams in the round of 64.
Okay.
I'm gonna have you tap generate here.
Let's see.
All right.
Generate. Let's see. Number 4.
Number 4.
All right.
Let's hope it's not the team that you're going up against. Wouldn't that be funny? No. Okay, so number 4 is the winner of Marshall Brown and Mohamed Alhouni versus Eric Pele. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Pele, I think, yeah.
Pele and Jericho Groman.
Okay.
So whoever wins this number 4 spot is predicted by you to make it the deepest into the tournament. All right, so I'm going to do the same. And my team is number 10, or my match up is number 10. So the winner out of Yuta Funamizu and Craig Johnson versus, do you know these guys?
Tom Protzek and John Lucian Goins.
Okay, perfect. So the winner out of that is my prediction to make it the furthest. So whoever loses gives away a paddle.
What if they both lose in the same round? Or they both make it to the same round?
Then we both give away a paddle.
Okay.
How about that?
Right on. Let's do it.
All right, let's move on to this segment. It's called Paddles of the Week. So we've discussed, Eddie and I, on the podcast, these new ProXR Protohype paddles. So they've got several prototypes out there. Last I looked, you were playing with the 29, so the Roman numeral XIX Prototype. Are you still playing with that one?
Indeed, yes,
okay.
I am.
And that's the elongated, which is a Gen 1 construction, really similar to the Paddletech Bantams. Has the wide style polypropylene, no edge foam, but it has the sort of ball-bearing putty weights in the sides. So what drew you to that? Why do you like it?
Yeah, I think for tennis players, it has a little bit of how it comes off the paddle, very similar to that. So when I'm hitting like the angles and just the drive, I feel like the feel of that is very pure and clean. And so when I like how I approach the game, I really like to be very intricate with how I'm hitting the ball. And so when I hit it pure, nothing feels better than that. And I guess ProXR has a ton of other awesome paddles. They have the foam stuff as well. And that gives a little bit more power in the counters, but a little bit bigger of a sweet spot. And it's more of a guide versus a kind of spinning through it. So how I come through the ball is different than other players, which is coming from tennis a little bit more, and that's why I like it.
So you're saying the bigger sweet spot was on the foam paddles or on your paddle?
Correct, yes.
The foam paddles?
Yes.
Okay. So you like the consistency of it, is how you characterize it. Is that more like a consistency at the power level coming off, where you kind of have this linear response? The more you put into it, the more you get out of it?
Exactly. It's a very linear response, and I can be very, I know exactly what I'm getting out of my paddle, which I love.
Whereas some foam-enhanced paddles, they're a little more jumpy with certain movements, so it's more of it feels like an exponential curve, sort of, right?
Yeah, exactly. Spot on.
All right. So good stuff. So that's interesting. You've tried the foam paddles, and because of that consistency is mainly...
Yeah, and it was a really tough decision for me, because you do get benefits from that. But for me, just with my game, this style of paddle was the way I had to go.
Yeah. And before we jumped on, you were asking me about my opinion of the foam paddles. And I think especially foam and polypropylene combined, to me, it feels great too, and a lot of other people. But especially the ones that are high power, I think you're right, they're harder to kind of map onto. There's a little more bounciness on some shots and not so much on others. But I think when we're talking all foam cores, so things like the Carbon True Foam Genesis and many other companies are coming out with all foam cores, I think there's a lot of potential there, especially with dual density or multiple density foams in that core. So you get more of you can basically do whatever you want with it. In terms of firepower and in terms of consistency. So you can dial it down or dial it up, but it feels great, get less vibration damping, and I think ProXR is working on some too, probably, so we'll find out. So,
it's always interesting too, that got me thinking, in tennis, did you play tennis at all?
I did, yeah.
So did you play with a dampener on your tennis?
Yeah, exactly.
So I did not play with the dampener.
Okay.
And it almost feels a little bit, when you said that, like the foam feels a little bit like it has that dampener on it, where the one that I'm playing with doesn't. And so you get a little bit more of that vibration and extra feel that I'm used to coming from tennis.
That's really interesting. So you feel more connected to the ball without the vibration dampening going on. And so, and I'm the opposite. I love like a not too dead. There are paddles out there that I feel like I'm not connected enough, but I like a little bit of dampening just like I used to do that in tennis, right? I have a couple of those dampeners on the bottom of my racket.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right, good stuff. Let's get into paddle shape. So I had started this interview series with different pros where I'd ask them why they play with that particular shape. And I've asked, Ben Johns and Anna Bright and recently Jack Monroe and a few others, Gabe and Tyra. And it's always interesting to get their perspective on why they prefer, like the two main shapes are elongated or wide body. And then there's hybrid shapes and stuff in between. But you're playing with an elongated, so
yes.
It measures 16.5 inches long by 7.5 inches wide. As far as I know, you've always done that in pickleball. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a reason, and have you experimented with other shapes?
So I have always loved the long handle for my 2E, just the feel I get on that. And it's a little bit more whippy. So when you have that longer handle, because there's less surface area on the face, you get a little bit more whip there. I've experimented a little bit with different shapes with an elongated handle. And so I've found, and I'm not as technical on this, but what I've found just like from feeling it and playing it is this one goes through the ball a little bit more than some of the ones that are a little bit more curved, give a little bit more spin. And so I like a little bit more of the oomph. And like when I'm reaching for counters, I feel like I have more surface area of coverage with this than a different shape while still maintaining the elongated handle.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I remember when I started playing, I'm like, well, what does a half an inch difference make in terms of performance of the paddle? But it actually does make a huge difference. You're thinking like reach. I'm like, all right, a half an inch reach isn't going to matter much at all. But you play with a wide body versus a elongated, other things being equal, so long handle, short handle, whatever, they do play very different. I think you're right. There's a lot more whip in longer paddles, especially with longer handles. And I think it's because you're moving that balance point up and you're putting more head heaviness to the paddle, right? And that's right. So there's that, and there's a little bit of extra reach does make a difference. I do feel like for me and other mortals who aren't as good as you and many other pros, I think the wide bodies offer good benefit, especially for me with a longer handle. So let's say we have a 5.5 inch handle, 5.5 inch handle. That's fine for me for two-handed backhands. But a wide body, the shape of the paddle broadens out the sweet spot left to right a little bit. So it's a little more forgiving. You're able to, you don't have to be so precise with it. So that I feel like is a benefit to a lot of lower level players, and even some pros prefer that, for various reasons. It's not just a skill level thing, it's also how you play. So when's the last time you tried a wide body paddle with the longer handle?
I don't think I have really. Maybe around Red Rock I tried out a few different shapes, but outside of that I've always been pretty committed to this shape. It's just felt right.
Play with what you know and
there is some of that. Like I experimented with it probably for like a week or so, but it's also that familiarity with it. And that was kind of when I was deciding on what paddle I wanted to play with. You have to play with it enough, and then you just have to trust your instinct. And it's like, all right, this is the way to do it.
And you mentioned the curvature on the paddle too. So there's the arrow curve top, or the squared top. And do you feel a difference in those?
I don't think I played with the curve top, and that one, just the surface area having that, I don't know whether it's subconscious or not, it just feels a little bit better. And it's still like the curve top gives a little bit more spin as well. And I think I've really leaned into the mechanics of my shot to give spin, and then having that as kind of the oomph behind it.
When you say curve top, are you talking about the shape of the ProXR you're playing with that's a little more curved, or actually
an even more curved top, like a 6-0 or like some of those types of things. I like the curvature of that's the most curved, where it kind of marries, you still get a little bit of that, but it's not too curved where it's cutting through the air.
Interesting. You say that you feel like you get more spin with a curvier top. Certainly. I'm trying to think of the mechanics of that because it does reduce the swing weight. You're able to whip it faster or, brush up on the ball a little quicker with the...
It may subconsciously bring my contact point closer to the, like a different spot on the paddle.
Because you're compensating for that curve.
Yeah, and I didn't do too deep of a dive into when I was playing with it, but that paddle that we were kind of like when we were messing around with the shape, I believe it was also narrower at the throat as well. Okay. And so that could have played a part in it as well.
Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to chat briefly about how paddle shape affects the shape and the size of the sweet spot. And this is something we talked about last week on the podcast. And we had a really good commenter, so I'd like to get, kind of your perspective as a pro also in terms of what you see as the size and shape of the sweet spot on different paddles you played with. But commenter CC Bowers said, the square versus circle shape of paddle, so a circular shape paddle head versus a squared one. And the sweet spot question is actually very interesting. If we controlled for the surface area, the circular shape would actually have the larger sweet spot. But because paddle limits from USAP are in terms of length plus width, so they have this rule of 24, the length plus the width of the paddle can't exceed 24 inches, right?
Okay.
Because of that, then the roundness issue causes a loss of surface area, which at some point can bring the sweet spot area down to smaller than a square shape. So what that means is when you account for the handle and the length plus the width, a square shape's going to have a slightly bigger sweet spot because the sweet spot follows ultimately the shape of the paddle, but it's just a little smaller in the center, where if you have a square and you have a circle, the circle's going to fit inside the square and you're going to get the edges of that square coming out a little bit more. And I think I heard an interview with Ben Johns back when, do you remember he started with the Franklin Ben Johns signature paddle, which is elongated square. He went to the Hyperion, which is a arrowed curved top. And then he went back to the Perseus after that, which is that original shape with the squared top. And I think what he said was he was able to, on his flicks in particular, he likes to catch the ball off center a little bit to roll through it and get a little more spin. And he wasn't getting the response he wanted from that curved top. So I think that's in that area where the square stretches out the sweet spot a little bit.
Okay.
Have you noticed that at all in terms of your paddle shapes? Like the tapered paddles, they seem to have the sweet spots a little higher versus the square paddles where it's more in the center.
So for me, I haven't messed around as much on that side. I kind of mess around with the weighting of the paddle that I have. And that's where I've kind of really tried to figure that stuff out, where I feel like weight for the most part has been able to, regardless of that, kind of solve for my, when I'm hitting the ball.
That's a good segue into another segment here. There was a question from a viewer, how you weight your paddle. So let's get into the details. And as you said, the weight on the edge of the paddles, I kind of describe it as like a magnet for the sweet spot. Mm-hmm. You put it up top, it stretches the sweet spot up. You put it down below, it stretches it down a little lower and wider, wherever you want to put it. So what is your weight setup and what are you using that for?
Yeah, so I think I have a video breaking down my exact one on Instagram and maybe YouTube, but how I look at paddle weighting is a little different. It is that, but what I'm really kind of fine tuning is at the top of the paddle, it gives me a little bit more whip through the ball. So that kind of helps my drives dip. So I'll put weight up at the top and then I'll use a little bit at the throat to open up that sweet spot, bring the sweet spot a little lower, and then put some in the handle to make it just a sturdier feel. So when you put weight up kind of in the paddle itself, you're obviously sacrificing a little bit of hand speed just because it's heavier. The closer you have it to that handle, the less you're giving up hand speed wise. So you still get that sturdiness and kind of that thump behind it. And my paddle's weighted up to about 9 ounces right now.
And where do you put are you using lead or tungsten? What are you using?
So I switched over to tungsten, just the environmental, just so I'm not touching it and all that stuff. And I'll put it up at the top, 1 strip at the top, then 2 kind of at the throat, and then 2 in the handle itself.
And is this 0.5 gram per inch tungsten tape? Do you know the density of it? Is it Braden's? Is it Pickleball Effect?
So I have not been doing it as of late.
Okay, gotcha.
I do not know that.
Somebody else is putting it on for you?
I know when I was doing it with lead, I had the 2 grams per inch at the top and then put it kind of like a full strip from where it started curving to the other side, and then kind of in the handle, then I put the tungsten I put Pickleball Effects tungsten there, and then I put, just because I'm touching my hands with it, that was the one I really cared about. And then a little, like small, probably this big of pieces on the side. But that's all in that or in that Instagram video that shows all of how I do it and kind of that.
We'll link to that in the description if you want to find out more about exactly how Connor weights up his paddle. So it goes up to 9. You have it at 9 ounces.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's actually dropped down. I had it at, I want to say, I got it at one point all the way up to 9.3, and then I dropped it back down to 9. So I've kind of been tinkering around with the power to hand speed and figuring out like what I want to add in just the mechanics of my strokes versus from the paddle itself.
I mean, that's certainly another element of the weighting, is it does add power to your paddle. And I think I've witnessed this trend over the past few years. Like if we go back a couple years ago, it feels like most of the pros were way above 9 ounces.
Yeah.
Versus now, you're seeing less and less perimeter weighting, maybe because the natural power of paddles has gone up,
yeah.
You know, and it's good to have the extra hand speed.
Yep.
So what you're trading off for the power is less pop and hand speed, I feel like, with
100%. Yeah, everything in pickleball is a trade-off. You get one thing, you give up something else.
Yep, for sure. Let's move on to another question. I'd like to get your ideas on how to break through plateaus at each kind of level. You can lump as many of these levels together as you want, but let's start at 3.5 and go up 4.0, 4.5, 5.0, however far you want to go. What do you see as the hurdles to get past those areas, and who are the people who are stuck in plateaus in those levels? What's the best thing they can work on to progress?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I still even get in plateaus, like, and just being a student of the game and learning, like, everyone kind of has different things that they're struggling with. So I would look at it less of like by level, and it's more of like what's missing from your game and being able to think critically and honestly about it. And so whether the people you're playing with at your level, maybe they're getting to the kitchen more often than you are. So we're going to break down, how do I improve my drop? Do I need to hit more drops? Do I need to just get that grooved if I'm a newer player? Do I need to really break down my technique? And finding those kind of things like that. And I love like just kind of looking back, watching film, reviewing, taking some stats. It's like all that stuff where it's like, okay, how many kitchen points am I winning? Okay, that's the weakness. Let's really be intentional with our practice. I think people get stuck in plateaus because they're just kind of like, I don't know what to do next, instead of looking at like when they are playing matches, what is that weak point of their game and diving into that.
Yeah. That makes total sense. Just pay attention to what is working and what isn't on the court.
Yeah.
Could you like talk about from, let's say, 3.0 to 4.0, 4.0 to 5.0, and I know it constantly changes, but what's one tip you would give?
Yeah.
Those groups?
So I would say like 3.0 to 4.0, it's getting to the kitchen and like being aggressive at that kitchen line. So one of the biggest things I see is when players are at the kitchen line, they let that ball get behind them. And so the more you can keep that out in front, you're going to be able to push that team and keep them back. This, like when it gets behind you, it's like free passage up to that kitchen line. That's a huge one. The just getting those drops into the kitchen, being calm, and then when you do hit it well, moving in behind it. That's probably, I would say, maybe at like the 3.5 to 4.0 level. I would say scooting back a little bit at like that 3.0 level. It's just the hands, like having kind of a forward leaning nose over toes is what I like to say, where you can just kind of like punch it back and be consistent with these motions of not taking too big of a swing and really cutting down the swing. And then at that 5.0 level, it's how do I set myself up for success? So it's intentional dinking. I think a lot of 5.0s are at that kitchen line and just waiting for a pop-up. They may hit some harder dinks, but they're not really like hitting, sliding, and trying to create like two shot attacks and those types of things as well.
So intentional dinking, being a little more aggressive and moving your opponents around and figuring out, instead of just waiting for a mistake.
Yeah.
You caused the mistake.
And it's like, let's say like you hit a really aggressive dink out wide. If you're not sliding to where they're most likely going to hit the ball, they might pop it up and you're not able to capitalize on that. And that happens a lot as well. So it's not just hitting a good shot, it's how do I follow that up?
We'll get back to your pro tips in a second, but another question from our listeners was, what's your favorite drill?
That's a good question. I mean, it really depends on like the area of focus I'm on. So one of the ones that I just love is like a good, like kind of holistic one is the slinky drill, where you're kind of moving up and back. This really gets the drops kind of dialed from every part of the court and gets this out in front kind of being aggressive at that kitchen line. That's something that I have to remind myself at times too. And so it really gets you feeling comfortable being aggressive, swinging through shots in different uncomfortable positions.
So the slinky drill, if people aren't familiar, you just start it at the kitchen or the baseline. Let's stay here at the kitchen. You dink, you take a step back, you drop it again, you take a step back, you keep dropping it all the way to the baseline, and then move forward, and then the other person goes. Is that kind of how you do it?
Yeah, spot on. And that's kind of my level one for it. And then when I'm like trying to get ready for a match, I do that. But when it drops, I try and see how quickly I can recognize that it drops in the kitchen. So I start moving up even before they make contact. And that just starts to cue in like taking that ground, getting up to that kitchen in a balanced but efficient way.
Okay. And do you go both directly across from you and then cross court? So head on and then just move over to cross court?
So for the slinky, I'll do head on and cross court. For kind of that second phase of this, I'll do that down the line, just because then when I do attack, I like having the hands directly in front of me.
Oh, that's cool. And then what would you describe, how would you break down your percentage of drilling versus actual playing?
Yeah, I think it's a progression. So when I'm like trying to work on, it depends on like the day, but let's say one of the things I've been working on is just like a backhand flick. And so I progress that. I don't go and just like hit 20 backhand flicks and then like show it in a match. I progress it where I work on the skill with feeding. Then I do like a dinking drill where I can start incorporating it in there without someone in front of me. So it's cross-court dinking, look to take one out of the air. And then progression 3, now it's a 3-person drill. I take it out of the air at someone. And then after that, then it's implementing it in gameplay. So when I'm working on a new skill, that's how I think about that. But just to answer more broadly, I try and go about 50-50 with like playing and practice. And before a tournament, like the last couple of days, like I'll just really try and get the feel of the ball and then try and apply that in practice matches, but I'm not trying to do anything more than that, really keeping it simple ahead of the tournaments.
Yeah, I'm sure you had to kind of segment yourself and, like you said, do a progression from when you're trying to learn a new skill. You're not going to jump out and try to hit it against Ben Johns, right? You're going to practice it and, in between tournaments, do more drilling on that until you feel comfortable with it, and then maybe incorporate it into your practice games and then eventually into the pro game, right?
Yeah, and I can still practice it this week, and then it's just not something that I'm like feeling like I have to whip this out in the matches, but it's something that's kind of in the background while I'm doing the other stuff.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. What do you recommend for that breakdown for amateur players?
Amateur players, this is kind of how I got into pickleball, and I think when you start, just getting out there and playing, and then when you kind of feel like you hit your first plateau, that's when the drilling really kicks in. I think there's this kind of people want to play certain game styles. When you watch my first tournament ever, the commentators were just like, he shouldn't speed this up, he shouldn't speed this up. And I'm so glad I didn't listen to them, and I kind of stayed to my play style. And so I love to tell people when I'm coaching, it's find your game style first. Once you kind of find that, now we can really build in the other shots. Obviously, I'm known for my Tui. It's not that I'm only working on that. I'm working on everything, but I'm still going to rely on that. And then you hit that plateau, do a lot more drilling, and really try and figure that out and start incorporating those things in practice matches. When you feel like you're doing that, now you can start playing a bit more practice matches. And then it's kind of like that ebb and flow of that, how I like to think about it.
You made a really good point, and that is, in pickleball, it's still too young, I think, to really like make a black and white statement that this way to play is better than that way to play, or this way to grip the paddle is better than that way to grip the paddle. And we've seen it evolve so quickly that, I mean, I think at this point you can follow your gut and figure out what play style you play best, even if it's unique to you, and just stick with it until it doesn't work and then change, right?
Yeah, and they're like underlying fundamentals of like racket sports that are developed, where it's how you get power and these things. I've probably brought this up way too much, but I watched like some Bryson DeChambeau on golf. Do you follow golf at all?
No.
So he plays on the PGA Tour. He's a top player, but he also hits the world's longest drive.
Okay.
I don't think he won it, but he was up there. And he talks about how he puts force on the ball in golf. And I've taken some of that to how I put force on the ball in singles. And so it's really unpacking what actually is important in your swing. And so I actually just launched TUI Pickleball School, which is like an online platform that kind of talks about some of the teaching and this. And like I could talk about this for hours. So shut me off when you need to.
So give me an example of what you're doing in singles to incorporate this golf principle to help you with your power.
So basically, he talks, and can I stand up here and give a quick little demo?
Sure.
All right.
It's going to cut you off, so it's going to be about this
All right, I'll stay low. You see me low on the court.
Right.
So Bryson, when you like take the club out this way, you're losing force on a golf swing. So it's like you're bringing it and then accelerating through.
Okay.
And so the same principle in pickleball happens where if you start speeding up back here, you're going to lose power. And it's only when you're starting to move through it that you get that power.
Okay. So what's the outcome there? What do you want to fix?
Yeah, correct.
Big backswing.
So a lot of players try and speed up. Once they start swinging, you want to have a slow to fast motion in this shot and really go and not try and put a lot of like arm motion in this backswing. You can start bringing the arm out as it's coming through, but you'll see when players try and hit it hard, they try and like whip it back like this, and that's what we're trying to cut out.
So you're slow until about how far from the ball do you start speeding through the ball?
So the hips bring out the paddle first, and once the hips bring out the paddle in the hand, that's when I accelerate. So if you think about the lever to start the forward swing, it's the hips, and then once the hips bring it out, now I can accelerate through.
Yeah, so it's a kinetic chain thing.
Exactly.
And I see you like your footwork is exceptional, and when you're hitting the ball, you're so low, and as a taller guy, it's difficult for me to do that, and I think I'm doing it, and I watch myself in a video, and it's like I'm standing straight-legged. So yeah, I mean, that's another thing you mentioned: getting low, using your hips, using the whole kinetic chain. Do you have any advice for people in terms of how to improve their footwork, how to improve their body positioning as they're hitting through the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just doing like kind of some like. I use the ladder drills. Like when I grew up playing tennis, like that was like my bread and butter for like footwork drills. And like any of that agility stuff is great. But I think really being intentional with where the contact point is. And so you can kind of use your left arm as like a barometer of where you want that ball to be. And the more you can kind of find that spot, you can start to set it up the same every time. And so it's not like I need to move my feet more. It's I just need to get into this position and my feet have to get there. And then it forces you to do it, as opposed to, I find, at least for me, like thinking move my feet more isn't as intuitive to get there.
Sure. So you're not thinking about the details, you're thinking about the bigger picture. And when you say use your left hand as kind of a barometer, where you impact the ball is what you're talking about,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
In front of you.
Yeah, so the contact point is where in tennis, like I had a straight arm, in pickle I have it a little bit more bent, and that's where I want to make contact with the ball on my forehand.
Okay, that makes total sense. One more question, and then we're going to get into pro tips. And after pro tips, I want you to talk about your school that you just opened. So one more thing, and this is for me. I'm curious what you're doing now, if anything, to prevent burnout. Because the life of a pro pickleball player has got to be insane. You're playing dozens of tournaments per year. It's one destination after another, sometimes on a weekly basis, sometimes bi-weekly. I get exhausted playing like 2 tournaments a year. Like it takes so much more out of you mentally and physically to play in a competitive situation. I don't know how you do it. Even when I was your age, I don't think I could have done it. So Yeah, what are you doing to prevent burnout?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. I think the two biggest things in pickleball are burnout and injuries. And those are like the silent killers that nobody talks about. And it's like finding the joy in pickleball. And so like, I think I kind of look at it more on like Federer side of like tennis, where it's like artistry versus like Nadal is like, I'm just gonna beat you down, then I'm gonna head to the gym, run 1,000 laps and like keep going. I think for me it's finding that like kind of like creation that like helps me avoid burnout.
Okay. So you're kind of dealing with both motivation levels as well as like your physical limits, right? So is there anything in particular you do outside of the courts for conditioning wise to help you physically cope with all the stresses that you encounter?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, the stress side, I try and practice like a little bit of mindfulness as like something like just in the morning, like a little bit of like meditation, and then on just like the physical like exercise side, like I try and hit the gym. I need to do it more, but I think that's a really good one just to kind of keep routine. Like gym, meditation, and stretching are like the three things I try and do off the court that really help me as well.
Do you have like a physical trainer who helps you in the gym, or?
I don't. I grew up playing tennis, and so college tennis, I had those workouts, and I've gone in and done like personal training sessions. So I've kind of fine-tuned what I need to maximize my pickleball like strength. So I'm not doing a ton of curls, but I'm doing back and like shoulders, wrists, legs is a huge one. I've had a few like injuries on the lower body throughout. Luckily, none of them have ever fully sidelined me, but they've been yes, yeah. But it's been brutal. Like you start to think about like what's gonna happen like when you're playing and like it's Monday and your leg's just killing you after like a long Sunday, and you're like, am I gonna be able to play the next tournament? And so really being disciplined there is key.
Yeah, it honestly surprises me that we don't see more sort of debilitating injuries in the pro ranks, because of the quantity of play and consistency. And I mean, as you look at pickleball today compared to a couple of years ago, it's a very, very different sport. It's a lot more demanding today,
yeah, 100%.
Physically and mentally and everything. So good to know that you're balancing that. So you have mindfulness in the morning. Do you use a particular app?
So I've been doing yoga nidra.
Okay, I've heard that. Yeah.
And I just like there's like some YouTube videos that just takes you like someone does a guided session with you, and that just kind of starts out my day right.
All right, so let's get into the pro tip.
Okay.
This is a new segment since we have a pro with us here today. So I want you to kind of give us a quick lesson on your two-handed backhand. What you're known for, what your most powerful weapon. Nobody really does it like you. So give us a quick lesson on that, and then we'll talk about the school that you just opened up, and give some more information about that.
Yeah, for sure. So with the TUI, the three things that I like to think about are, one, having a low to high motion. So if my paddle tip is below my wrist to start, I can throw that paddle tip through the ball. This is how I think about getting spin. So that's kind of the spin aspect of it. Then the power aspect is kind of twofold. It's letting the hips and core. People talk about kinetic chain, legs, hips, and core. I think I've kind of more leaned into hips and core in pickleball, because sometimes it's just a smaller court. You don't need as much of the legs, but all of those three are where you get your power from. So that brings out the paddle. So it's in that low position. My hips bring out the paddle, and then I throw it high. That's kind of the second thing. And then the third thing is I stay low through it. So I lead with this right shoulder, and I'm kind of leading in. I'm not opening up the chest. So a lot of times people will kind of like lift up and open up the chest, and that's causing it to either pop up or be another reason that they lose power.
That's a really good point. And I think when I'm doing my two-handed backhands, I want to go low to high with my legs and my paddle all at once. And I think too many variables is more at risk of popping things up. Things can go more wrong the more variables you put into it. Right?
I love that. I always like, so with school and everything that I teach, I always try and say, let's look at what variables are here and let's reduce them as much as possible and focus on what actually makes the shot work. And so that's like such a key thing. Like I see a lot of like coaches will try and really like make this really technically like complex shot, but let's figure out what actually makes this shot work and give that and get that consistent. And then we can add their levers that you can pull to give more power, to give more spin. But let's get the basics down and keep it simple. And so with school, it's an online platform. It's a monthly membership, and it takes you through like how I think about the game, what's worked for me in the pro game. And what I love so much about it is a lot of times when I'm teaching, it's something that I have like started to figure out in my game. And so it's like, it's working, and like, I know it's working. And so it's like this, like, it's kind of this puzzle that I'm solving where it's like, why did this week my drop like suck or whatever it is? Right. And then I kind of go back. And so you get these modules that you can follow along with. You get every other week a live video Q&A with me. And then there's a community platform aspect of it where you can ask any questions, share your videos. And then one other thing, there's like every month we'll do like a fun challenge with like a principle in it. So like maybe balancing a cup of water on the head and seeing if you can hit, where it's fun, but it also promotes keeping the upper body still, reducing that variable. So I'm super stoked. This has been a huge passion project of mine. And we just launched today, actually. So really? Very fortuitous timing. Yeah. But
that's very cool. Where can people find it?
So it's on school.com, and I have the link in my Instagram bio. It's on all my socials probably now. I'm shamelessly plugging it a little bit just because I'm so excited. But yeah.
Well, send me the link. I'll put it in the description for anyone who's interested. It sounds cool because you're combining, looks like recorded lessons probably as one element of it. Every other week you said there's a live call with you.
Yeah.
And there's a forum base. What's the forum platform?
Yeah, so the forum, like, it's all on this site, and they just basically can ask anything, and we kind of have it segmented into general questions, like some of the challenges and all these different things. And it's a way to keep continuity. Like a lot of times too, when I like go and teach in different locations, they've been getting all these different kind of things on, like two different coaches will tell two different things on how to hit aggressive 2E dink. And so it's like, how can we simplify what you're hearing, simplify the technique, and just make everything a little bit easier to digest?
So is it tiered by level? So like you ask, are you a 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, and then they enter that way? Or is it more like they pick out what they want to work on and then go find it?
So it kind of how we're starting it is like giving a holistic high level view that kind of everyone can kind of start with. We go into strategy, and then we really break down the mechanics of it. So there are kind of things in it where it's like, here's the fundamental principle, and then here are the add-ons that you can start adding as you get to those higher levels. But it's really taking a technical aspect and a strategic aspect. Strategic applies to all levels, and then the technical, you can kind of go to where you need to get to and then kind of start adding to it. But also a lot of times like the 4-0s, 5-0s have a key part of the foundation that's missing. And so when you're going through it, it's really important, I would say, to kind of go through from that first part and be really intentional with that to make sure that when you're building the house, the foundation is still sturdy.
I speak from experience. I didn't build a strong foundation when I came in, and there's weaknesses. I'm sure everybody goes through this. So like when I plateaued at 4-0, it's just because I know my foundation wasn't strong in certain areas I could have worked on better, but sounds great.
Yeah, it's actually so funny. Like a lot of my game is I came onto the scene quickly and had some success early. And not saying that to brag, I'm just saying that more in the sense of like, I had some foundational issues, and that's kind of what inspired me a little bit too, where I had to really look at like what made it tick, like, and understand that for myself and reinvent some of those things. So I'm going in some of the, like the basic stuff is like, that's because I needed to add that to my game, and it's helped me kind of progress as a pro myself.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's and it's just like a great way to build community. Members get every quarter a swag with like 2E merch in it as well. So we're just trying to have some fun and learn a little bit.
Awesome. Well, sounds good, Connor. I appreciate you sitting down with me.
Yeah,
and I think I forgot to mention on the paddle giveaway, I'll link to a place to sign up. Everybody who enters has a chance to win, and we'll choose randomly. All right, good sir. Always fun to sit down with you. It's been a while since we chatted. Good to catch up.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a ton of fun.
Absolutely.